Right now, the Kremlin is losing control over its territories. Ukraine has demonstrated its military might. New weapons are striking right at the heart of Russia. An incredible development by Ukrainian weapons engineers has amazed the entire world. No one in Russia is safe anymore. There is panic in the Kremlin. Finland is moving troops to the border with Russia. 15,000 NATO soldiers are at Putin's doorstep. Finland is going all in. Putin is losing control over the north. At this very moment, Western troops have begun to act. The truth from the front lines. Putin's myth is collapsing under the blows of the Ukrainian armed forces. Ukrainian fighters are crushing the enemy. Kupyansk is holding on. Russia is losing people and positions. Ukraine is closing the trap there. The Russians will be surrounded. There is panic in the Kremlin. The Allies are raising the stakes. Europe is intensifying its blow against the Kremlin. The Netherlands is arming Ukraine with Tomahawks. Putin is furious. Made in Ukraine. A new Ukrainian military technology means a deadly surprise for Russia. Ukraine is launching a weapons revolution, the Kremlin is terrified, and the Ukrainian armed forces are reaching a new level of power. Our Shahed is already in the skies over Russia. The horrifying truth about the Russian army has come to light and shocked the whole world. Putin's mobilization is destroying everything in its path. All this and more in our upcoming report. Hotspot. A long-range nightmare for the Kremlin. Every day, Ukraine delivers precise strikes on Arafia. Russia no longer knows where it is safe. Explosions are thundering even in places that were previously out of reach. We will show exactly what is shattering Putin's imperial dreams. The Russian army is in shock, and Ukrainian military birds are now everywhere.
Distances of hundreds or even thousands of kilometers are no obstacle for Ukrainian weapons. Russian oil refineries, well, that's clear. The factories are fucked. That much is obvious even without saying it. Key facilities of the military-industrial complex and the Russian war machine. And recently, in response to the ongoing shelling of Ukraine's civilian infrastructure, Ukrainian forces have also started targeting critical infrastructure in Russia.
Where are we going? Now that's a ride.
When the Kremlin threatens Ukrainians with blackouts, Russians should also prepare for a cold and difficult winter. If they threaten blackouts, for example, in the capital of Ukraine, the Kremlin should realize that a blackout could also happen in the Russian capital. For a long time, Western allies restricted Ukraine's ability to strike deep into Russian territory. As a result, Ukraine has built up its own long-range arsenal. According to the head of Ukrainian intelligence, Kyrilo Budanov, today 99% of strikes on Russian oil refineries are carried out with Ukrainian weapons. Back when all this started, when people said we were fighting with one hand tied behind our back, I tend to agree with your view that this is the right interpretation of what was happening then. But now we have our own production. And it is precisely our domestic production that has given us the ability to use our forces and resources as we see fit. The Kremlin understands only the language of force. The best argument in any negotiations with Moscow is a powerful Ukrainian army and defense industry. In particular, domestic production of long-range drones and missiles, which Ukraine regularly uses to strike targets in Russia located thousands of kilometers or more from the front line.
In order to somehow bring this war to a stalemate, to shift it, we need to learn not only to repel enemy attacks on the front line, but also to suppress their logistics and aviation. That's why it became necessary, and I'm not even mentioning the need to strike at military-industrial complex facilities and Russia's energy system.
This is Belgorod. Basically, it's a mess here. There's no electricity anywhere in Belgorod at all.
If the simplest drones to manufacture are used for strikes on Russian oil refineries, jet-powered drones like Polyanity, Peklo and Bars are better suited for military-industrial complex targets. Their technical specifications are not disclosed. Experts suggest that the range of these jet-powered drones is between 500 and 700 kilometers. The main advantage is their low cost in comparison to their cruise missile competitors. There are two such places. Two cities like Moscow and Leningrad, which are the most protected by the Russian Federation's air defense systems, could start getting hit every evening. Bar will be able to reach them, and I believe this should happen systematically. For dessert, Ukrainian long-range missiles are in store for the occupiers. The long-range Neptunes and Flamingos with ranges of 1,000 and 3,000 kilometers respectively. The Ukrainian Pink Bird impresses not only with its enormous range, but also with a warhead weighing about 1,000 kilograms.
Usually the warhead of a modern cruise missile weighs 450, but at most 500 kilograms. As a rule, almost all missiles have a 450 kilogram warhead. What does a 1-ton warhead provide? When it hits a target, for example, an industrial facility, 2 such missiles can completely disable it for at least a year. That is, there will be a single crater about 20 meters in diameter.
Russian terrorists shelling Ukrainian cities must realize that a mirrored response is inevitable.
Finland is challenging the Kremlin. 15,000 soldiers are already at the Russian border. Moscow is trembling. In Karelia, people's militias are being formed. Fear has engulfed even the remote regions. Finland is demonstrating its strength and making it clear. We are ready. A new era is in the air and Russia has no place in it. All the details are provided in the report.
Acting proactively, Finland is deploying 15,000 troops to the border with Russia. The Finns are preparing for the largest series of military exercises this year. Conscripts, reservists, professional military personnel, as well as units from allied countries, Sweden and the United Kingdom will take part in them. As reported by the country's ground forces, the purpose of the maneuvers is to test the army's readiness to defend the state and to strengthen cooperation with allies.
We are talking about Petrozavodsk, Kandalaksha and other populated areas, settlements on the territory of the Russian Federation, which indicate the redeployment of Russian army units directly near the borders of Finland.
One of the largest episodes will be the exercise at Olivolai Centre, which will take place in southern Finland from November 27th to December 4th. About 7,000 participants will be involved in it.
The Russian Federation has constantly made it clear to Finland that there is a looming threat over this country. Moreover, there has been a constant element of military political pressure on Finland with the aim, accordingly, of maintaining its so-called neutral status. In other words, there is not the slightest reason to claim that friendly, good neighborly relations were established after the occupation of Finnish lands. The Russian military presence near Finland's borders was constantly increasing.
In the spring of 2023, Finland became a member of the North Atlantic Alliance. This provoked a sharp reaction from Russia, worsening bilateral relations. In addition, Finland imposed sanctions against Russia and refused to grant asylum to Russians fleeing mobilization. After that, Putin's lackeys seize every opportunity to blame the Finns for all sorts of sins. For example, in September, former ALCO president Dmitry Medvedev decided that Finland was preparing to attack Russia.
After joining NATO under the guise of defensive measures, Helsinki is pursuing a confrontational course, preparing for war with Russia, apparently setting up a springboard for an attack on us.
Moreover, according to his version, Russia supposedly legally deserves reparations from the Finns for World War II, claiming that they once paid too little thanks to the goodwill of the Russians.
This is precisely an element of diplomatic and military pressure on Finland. Moreover, similar statements are being made not only regarding Finland but also with respect to Sweden, specifically about the island of Gotland, and likewise towards Poland.
Following the alcoholic Medvedev, the chairman of the State Duma Defense Committee, Andrei Kartapolov, also made aggressive statements. He stated, or rather threatened, that Russia is ready to defend itself at any moment since they have everything they need. Medvedev had previously spoken about this as well.
We cannot simply ignore the important fact that Finland is currently a member of the North Atlantic Alliance, also known as NATO. This development determines and influences changes in our military approaches to securing and protecting the border, as well as responding to any possible or potential unfriendly acts.
The political and military leaders of Finland are doing everything they can to emphasize that an attack by Russia would be an act of suicidal madness.
The Russian Federation is demonstrating its readiness for a direct confrontation with the NATO bloc. and accordingly the first state that will be in the focus of the occupying country's army will be Finland and the Baltic states. Therefore, the risks are quite high. This is also evidenced by the formation of new military units in the Leningrad military district and, accordingly, the deployment of military infrastructure directly near the borders with Finland.
Earlier, it became known that Finland offered NATO to place a new military base on its territory. Helsinki could become a base for large NATO reconnaissance drones. Another one of Putin's lies has been completely shattered. Kupyansk is holding. Ukrainian defenders are confidently holding their positions and crushing the enemy on the approaches. The fighting is heavy, but the initiative is increasingly on the side of the Ukrainian armed forces. Russian troops are suffering losses that the Kremlin is carefully concealing. Next, the whole truth from the front lines. Only facts with no Kremlin filters. Watch until the end. You need to see this.
The battles for control over the city of Kupyansk, a major transport hub in the Kharkiv region, are ongoing.
The situation in Kupyansk remains difficult, but these days our forces have more control. We continue to defend our positions.
Against this backdrop, Russian propaganda has once again released another batch of fakes. The bunker dweller claimed that Ukrainian troops in Kupyansk are neither surrounded nor blocked.
In the city of Kupyansk and the city of Krasnoarmeysk, the enemy has ended up blocked and surrounded. By the way, I discussed this issue with the commanders of the respective groups. They have absolutely no objection whatsoever, Andrei Ivanovich, no objection at all, to allowing representatives of the media, including both foreign journalists from other countries and Ukrainian journalists from within Ukraine, into the encirclement zone of the enemy. This is so that these journalists and media representatives can go in, enter the area, and see with their own eyes, firsthand, exactly what is happening there, and be fully convinced about the current and ongoing condition of the Ukrainian troops who are surrounded, so that the political leadership of Ukraine can make the appropriate decisions regarding the fate and safety of their citizens and their servicemen.
But these statements have nothing to do with reality. This is the painfully familiar old Kremlin tactic: media blackmail and an attempt to demoralize Ukrainian society.
As of today, I believe the situation has been stabilized, and I hope that our security and defense forces will be able to do everything to ensure that Kupyansk is not captured by the enemy.
In reality, this is not an encirclement, but rather heavy local fighting.
The main direction of the occupiers' attack is not Kupyansk itself, but Kupyansk-Vuzlovyi. The occupiers' plans include the possibility of establishing control over this key railway station.
As of October 30th, Ukrainian forces maintain control over most of Kupyansk and key transportation hubs. Russian occupiers have entrenched themselves in small groups on the northern outskirts of the city and in the western part, creating a foothold for further attempts at an offensive.
In other words, they are trying to change their tactics and strategy of combat operations in urban environments. It is fundamentally different from the tactics used in Bakhmut 2.5 years ago, when the occupiers employed a large amount of armored vehicles and accordingly the so-called local assault tactics to establish control over this settlement.
The main threat remains the northern directions and the enemy's attempts to break through to the Kharkiv-Kupyansk-Svatove highway. This route is vital for supplying Ukrainian units on the eastern bank of the Askar. From the south and east, REF troops have been unable to approach the city. The main supply route for the AFU remains through the Kupyansk-Uzlovoy railway station and the embankment dam across the Oskol. The dam is periodically subjected to enemy airstrikes, but it remains operational and the pontoon crossings serve as backup routes.
In other words, the main goal and strategic objective of the occupiers is not to advance deeper into Kharkiv region, but to repeat the scenario of 2022, when the Izium grouping of the occupiers was considered one of the most combat capable and aimed to achieve the operational encirclement of Ukrainian units precisely in the area of the Sloviansk-Kramatorsk agglomeration. This is the main goal. That is, the strategic objective of the occupiers is to establish full control over the territory of Donetsk region.
But the enemy has run into the tough defense of the Ukrainian armed forces. Counterattacks by Ukrainian troops are holding back the Russian advance.
At the moment, Ukraine's defense forces are conducting counter-sabotage operations to prevent Russian occupiers from penetrating further into the urban area and from gaining direct control over the key hub of Kupyansk.
Kupyansk is not just another point on the map. It is a symbol of resilience, endurance, and military stamina. The Russian army is trying to wear the city down, but the Ukrainian defense is holding strong. And no matter how much the Kremlin tries to pass off wishful thinking as reality, the truth is on the side of those who are defending their home. And step by step, they are driving the enemy out of Ukrainian land.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
The Netherlands is making a powerful move by purchasing American Tomahawk missiles, specifically for Ukraine. The kingdom is strengthening its support and is, in fact, becoming a participant in the fight against Russian aggression. Putin is furious, but these missiles could change the course of the war and finally shatter the myth of Russia's invincibility. You can find the details of this strategic move in the following report.
Ukraine's partners in Europe continue to provide assistance to Ukraine in its war with Russia.
We see that this is criminal aggression and Russia must be held accountable for it. The courts need to address this. The criminal aggression must end, the killings must stop. To achieve this, we must continue to put pressure on Russia with sanctions and do everything possible to help Ukraine defend itself from these attacks on the ground and in the air.
As a new step in defense partnership with Ukraine, the Netherlands will contribute 55 million euros to the World Bank to support Ukraine. We
are doing everything possible to support Ukraine, and we are doing it not just in words, but in action. Today we are announcing that the Netherlands will contribute 55 million euros to the World Bank. For the World Bank to be able to help Ukraine, it must cover the costs of recovery and reforms. Your struggle. Our struggle.
The Netherlands and Ukraine will continue to cooperate on joint defense projects. The focus is on the joint production of Ukrainian equipment. In the Netherlands,
the Netherlands and Ukraine have agreed to work together on drone manufacturing. We will continue to provide support with military equipment, F-16 aircraft, other systems, and weapons.
The Netherlands was one of the first countries to agree to transfer its F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. The first aircraft were delivered to Ukraine in 2024. Washington is currently considering transferring AGAV missiles to Ukraine. In addition to the US, these missiles are not only possessed by the UK and Australia, but also by the Netherlands. The Kremlin is seriously on edge. The propaganda outlet Izvestia even sent a letter to the Dutch diplomatic mission in Moscow asking about the possibility of transferring Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine.
In a recent official letter to Parliament, the government explicitly stated that given Ukraine's ongoing high needs on one hand and the pressing security interests of Europe and the Netherlands on the other, the cabinet has decided to allocate additional financial funding. Regardless of whether the Dutch government discloses information about the supplies being delivered, the Ministry of Defense is guided by the principle of operational security, as well as the interests of third parties involved in the deliveries.
According to Rostelegram channel, 2 US Navy majors received State Department approval to purchase about 200 Tomahawk land attack missiles in various versions for the Netherlands under the Navy's Foreign Military Sales Program. The total cost of the program is estimated at $2.19 billion. The transfer of their own missiles to the Netherlands is in line with the new rules under which Europe purchases weapons from the US for Ukraine, the two majors remind. One question remains: when can we expect the first use? Meanwhile, it has already been openly stated that the Dutch Ministry of Defense has signed an agreement with the Estonian company Milrem Robotics and battery manufacturer Tulip Tech for joint production of defense equipment. The company will supply Ukraine with more than 150 unmanned ground vehicles.
It is an honor for us to lead this project, in partnership with the Netherlands and VDL. The SAMIS platform has already proven its value in combat conditions, and we believe that this contribution will significantly strengthen Ukraine's defense capabilities.
The cooperation is structural in nature and is planned for at least 10 years. In the coming months, new production lines are scheduled to be launched. In addition, the company Milrem Robotics will conduct comprehensive training for Ukrainian operators to ensure effective deployment and maintenance in the field. The new units will complement the 15 MIS vehicles that are already in operation in Ukraine and have been proving their effectiveness on the battlefield since 2022.
This vehicle is capable of carrying 700 to 750 kilograms of payload. It can transport not only the wounded and handle logistics, but it can also be used as a combat chassis, because it can be equipped with both machine guns and automatic cannons.
The Demis is an unmanned transport platform designed to support armed forces, logistics, reconnaissance, and combat support. Currently, the system is part of robotics programs and is operated in 19 countries, including 8 NATO members.
The Netherlands is one of the most principled defenders of life. A country that truly supports our defense, our resilience, and which is also important, our work, for the sake of achieving justice.
The Netherlands has also allocated 300 million euros for the restoration and strengthening of Ukraine during 2025 to 2026. Of this amount, 52 million euros will be allocated to energy infrastructure and water supply. Since 2022, the country has allocated 26 billion euros to Ukraine, of which 13.6 billion has gone to military support. The Netherlands and its allies continue to support Ukraine in its fight for freedom and security.
Ukraine is reaching a new level of armament. It's no longer just Neptunes and Flamingos. These are technological breakthroughs achieved during wartime. Every new model is yet another nightmare for the Russian rear. Engineers are working around the clock, turning ideas into deadly reality. There is panic and chaos in the Kremlin. All the details. More in the following report.
Ukraine has destroyed a Russian Oreshnik on Russian territory. This was stated by the head of the SBU, Vasyl Malyuk. It has not been disclosed exactly what weapon was used by the Ukrainian special services. Nevertheless, Ukraine's arms industry is expanding significantly every year. Ukraine is successfully using Neptune and Flamingo missiles together to strike Russia. President Volodymyr Zelensky told journalists about this and noted that while it is not being used on a large scale, it is already in use. These are the first tangible results regarding the weapon.
In the future, I think that the missile attacks carried out with the help of Flamingo or Neptune will be accompanied by a large number of different types of unmanned systems, drones, each performing its own function. Some will distract air defenses, some will destroy air defenses, some will create interference, some will suppression using electronic warfare.
The president also mentioned the use of the Polyanitsia drone missile, which has already struck enemy military depots dozens of times. The second positive trend, according to Zelensky, is the use of the Ruta drone missile, which for the first time flew 250 kilometers and hit an offshore platform. We
have quite a lot of development specifically in drone missiles, and there are analysts who say that these are all just small-sized cruise missiles. I don't quite agree with that, for one simple reason. Usually a cruise missile is something that has some kind of wing mechanization. That is, the missile is launched either from the air or from the ground, then these wings unfold and they create aerodynamic lift, which allows the cruise missile to fly long distances. Our Ukrainian drone missiles, on the other hand, have fixed wings, meaning they are installed once and for all and do not require any special launchers or special containers that are inserted into these launchers to ensure standardization.
However, the greatest success for the Ukrainians is considered to be the mass use of the Kamikaze Lyuty drone, with up to 300 UAVs deployed.
Lyuty is a system with a slightly different concept. It has nothing in common with the Shahed, neither externally nor internally. Both the control system and the guidance system are different. And the components it has, image recognition, target correction, artificial intelligence, have absolutely nothing in common with the Shaheds. In
the combat payload and range, the Ukrainian Security Services naval drones have improved, now capable of striking targets over 1,500 kilometers away. They were first used in 2022 during the attack on Russian Black Sea Fleet ships in Sevastopol Bay. And since then, these drones have been constantly evolving and improving.
Our security service now has significantly more ways to destroy targets than it did before. And it's not just the Malyuk anymore. There are many other things as well. If there are tasks for the Malyuks are used. If there are tasks for other drones are used.
Since August of this year, the serial production of the Flamingo missile has been announced, capable of striking targets at a distance of 3,000 kilometers. The modernized Neptune has been successfully hitting ground targets for a year now. Currently, it can reach up to 400 kilometers. It has been stated that soon it will be able to hit targets at a distance of 1,000 kilometers. In
Russia, hell is breaking loose. Single fathers are not being released from the army. Their children are left without guardians and end up in orphanages while the Kremlin boasts about patriotism. The military are rebelling, but the system doesn't let anyone go, not even those who risk losing what is most precious to them. About this and other horrors happening in the Russian army. Watch next.
The wounded and maimed are sent into assaults. Inconvenient soldiers are simply eliminated, and if someone doesn't want to sign a contract, they still will sign it. But the newly minted soldier only finds out about this after the fact. It's also almost impossible to quit the army. They don't allow even single fathers to leave, even though by law they should be released without any issues. During this time, their children are simply placed in orphanages.
According to the single fathers interviewed by Verstka, commanders may simply refuse to accept their resignation reports from the start, denying dismissal verbally. Even if the documents are accepted, they can get lost, but the servicemen continue to serve while their children temporarily live with relatives or are placed in orphanages.
So it turns out that children become orphans even though their parent is alive? But really, what can be said about dismissing a healthy man when even severely wounded soldiers are not discharged from the Russian army?
They looked at us and said, "So what? Healthy but missing a leg. Oh, it's just a leg, a leg. Well, guy's the sky, but it's a leg. He's been sitting here for days, too." What was I trying to say with that? They came in, looked around, asked who was there for what, and were told the reasons. All right, guys, got it. And then they left.
These occupiers will soon be sent on their final meat assault. The fact that some are missing limbs doesn't interest anyone. Their commanders just use them as disposable cannon fodder. Some occupiers still believe the state will help them, so they complain to the Kremlin ombudsman about being denied medical assistance or receiving poor treatment. The number of such complaints has quadrupled in 2 years, from 459 to 1,976.
The applicant's husband, after receiving treatment at a frontline hospital, was sent to the Military Medical Commission to determine his fitness for military service. Upon arriving at the military unit to receive the order and directions for the medical commission, he was sent to the front line. Since May 2024, he has been listed as missing in action.
After injuries or due to pre-existing health issues, not all soldiers are given enough time for full and proper rehabilitation. Sometimes a soldier is sent beyond the line despite doctors' recommendations to continue treatment and the need for rehabilitation. As a result, a serviceman who is physically unable to perform combat duties ends up on the front line.
But at least these ones went to the front on their own. And there are cases when Russian men only find out after the fact that their line of absolutely everyone ends up under the hammer, no exceptions. Cerebral palsy, mental illnesses, missing limbs. None of that matters, it's all useful in the Russian army. Local administrations, of course, know all about it and even encourage and assist. In
my native village of Kinyo-Cherkasy, they got a guy from Siberia drunk. They married him off to an elderly woman of loose morals and low social responsibility. They sent him to the front, where he died, and now they are claiming compensation as his wife, even though he had never even seen her in his life.
The commanders of such a Russian soldier can help in his liquidation. The occupiers complain that unwanted mobilized soldiers are often sent on suicide assaults. One of these roles during an assault is called a beacon among the military. The occupier is sent without a weapon or body armor to expose the firing positions of Ukrainian forces.
You just run in one direction and there is a blocking detachment behind you that won't let you go back. Your only chance to survive is to get wounded and be taken prisoner.
The occupiers admit not only to being liquidated by their commanders, but also to killing civilians. A Russian soldier recounted how his commander entered the wrong coordinates, which resulted in an artillery strike on a village. Many people died, including children. The soldier only learned about what happened after the administration of the so-called LNR complained to the command.
Basically, we mixed up the targets, Gorozhgrad and Uragan positions. They had the same names for the grid squares, and the idiot who was on duty at the command post just mixed them up for the captain. But what do I care? They give me the numbers and I have to call the battalion commander. So he says, how is he feeling? Yeah, he's fine. He says there were 12 children, urchins, 9 women.
Of course, the incident was hushed up, and on Russian television they reported that supposedly Ukrainian servicemen were in that village. And these are just the stories that have come out in the last few days. In reality, the situation is much worse. And with each passing day, it keeps getting worse.
That's all for now. For more breaking news from the front, tune in to the next episode.